Every nuance of the world around me is created by stories I tell myself. I am a bundle of emotions telling stories, free to be exactly who I am in every moment. I am emotion art. Freedom. Welcome. The audio engineering and awesome music you're hearing are thanks to Buddy Anderson. Check out his music on Spotify at From Another Mista, and Angela Cook, keeping this thing rolling. Thank you guys. This is a conversation I had with Orlo Flock, or the Orlo. He's someone I knew briefly in my early Army days, probably 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. A lot of those circumstances are going to be talked about in the conversation, so I won't restate them here, but I wanted to have a conversation with him because I remembered him as an honest and curious person who thought outside the box. And since that level of authenticity is something I've been chasing for a while, I knew a conversation with him would be super instructional for me. Also, I was just interested to see where his life has taken him, or rather where he has taken his life. So he's currently down in Mexico, and we had some interference digitally because it was over a phone call. I tried to clean it up as much as I could, but there are some parts that are just difficult to understand. I don't think the point is lost in any of it, though. So if it's hard to understand, just keep listening for a couple of seconds and it'll tune back in. So here is a little piece of joyful cosmology as seen by the Orlo. Enjoy.
Welcome to Emotion Art.
Emotion art, where we sit down and make art.
Emotion art.
Creative energy moving outward in conscious expression of feeling.
Emotion art.
Emotion art. Emotion because we are literally made of emotion. Art because everything we do wants to be art. Emotion art feels.
Emotion art. It's all beautiful. Emotion art. Emotion art.
A space for emotional art. Creative energy moving outward in conscious expression.
Emotion art.
An emotion art gallery.
This is emotion art.
You're welcome.
Hey there, man. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad.
Oh, you sound good on my end. You got me good.
Yeah, you're very understandable. That's what's important. Are you on a microphone?
I'm in with headphones on.
Okay.
Oh.
You know what? Over the phone.
I'm doing that.
Yeah, perfect. Over the phone connections. Really, the only thing that goes wrong is if I talk over you, it mutes your sound out. So I'm going to really try to avoid that, even though it comes with my nature.
Sweet.
Yep.
I'm excited to do this.
Heck yeah.
I was thinking about this. It's been in the back of my head. And I kind of actually want to flip the script a little bit on you at the beginning and hear what you remember about me, and then why you reached out to me, like all these years later. Like what sparked that?
Okay, you couldn't have led in with a better thing for me. So I like the flip getting script because that keeps life interesting.
So I'm at this point where I'm actually really trying to figure out who I am in other people's eyes. And I know that your perspective is a specific direction, but I met you at a very important or an interesting time in my life. Right? In that whole like military, really trying to figure who the hell I was. And
yes. And
so I have my own recollection of who I am, but I really am looking for like what other people saw, how other people saw me at that point in my life. And I'm actually planning on building like a questionnaire to send out to everyone who has kind of known me fairly well, and kind of like, and ask them like a group of questions, or just asking for a straight up story of who I am in their head. And the reason is because I'm at this point where I kind of feel like I want to like teach
Mm.
something, but I don't really know what I have to teach.
Mm.
But it'd be great to hear that from other people's perspectives.
Okay. So you and I were medics in the Army. That's how we met, as far as I remember. And I guess I don't have to give fair warning about my crap memory, but life gets jumbled up for me sometimes in the past. You made a huge impression on me. I probably didn't show it. I don't know. I remember going to your house or where you lived. It was, we had some drill or the other, but you were just, what's the word? You were different. You were just very different. So at your house, you had a breakfast sandwich maker on your counter. I'd never experienced that before. You could use a contraption on the counter to make eggs and meat and English muffin breakfast sandwich, which is something that I love, but I always made it in a frying pan. And so that you brought that out, just like, oh yeah, this is just the way you do this. Typified kind of how I saw you. I believe you introduced me to the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. I remember you telling stories. And by the way, talking about telling stories, you not only saw the world differently, you were always looking for the next hack. And you were talking about it constantly. And at that point, you didn't want to live a life where you exchanged your time for money. I didn't know what it was back then, but there was something that was so intoxicating about the way you saw the world and the way you talked about your job and the way you talked about the books you read. It was just enamoring. So more recently, I started to go through, like maybe in the past, I gave up being a Christian. I want to say it was more than 10 years ago. And then I started listening to Alan Watts, and just to oversimplify things, I started my transition process to go from the Judeo-Christian Western culture, raise good Christian kids that are going to do the right thing and provide for their families, and just continue the cycle. And then just realizing I didn't want to be part of that anymore. Not that I don't want to take care of my kids and have a connected and a virtuous life. Very much I want that, but I want to do it as myself, not as whatever version I was taught to be. So I saw that in you. I saw that there was something different. You were hungry for something different, and you were looking. And so when I went through that transition process and I started to realize that the world around me is nothing like I have ever thought it was, you were one of the first people that popped into my head, because I lost touch with you. I've lost touch with most people in my life. And also 10 years ago or so, I realized that I've had crippling imposter syndrome for my entire life. So I would have been terrified. I would have been like, he has no reason to want to talk to me. That's why I wouldn't have reached out to you before. But once I realized that I'm actually a valuable person in and of myself, and the people who appreciate me for who I am are the people I want to talk to, I immediately knew I wanted to talk to you, because I felt the emotional similarity between the kinds of things you were saying back then. And back then, I mean, when was this? This was, let's see, we deployed in 2009. So this would have been pre-09.
Yeah.
Back,
when did you join?
Winter 2004, I believe. 2004, 2005.
Okay, yeah.
In Montana. But
when did you come to Oregon?
I've been to Oregon off and on my whole life, but I came to Oregon. So I moved to Montana just kind of on a whim must have been 2004. And then by the end of 2004, I had gotten recruited.
Oh.
And then, so after I went to basic training and then Fort Sam, that was 6 months. So that would have been, the middle of 2005. I just moved back to Corvallis.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that was a little bit rambling, and maybe maybe it didn't fully answer everything you're looking for, but how's that?
That's how I remember it too. But I actually don't. I was thinking about it. I don't actually remember you a whole lot.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
What I remember about you is you were completely trustable.
Mm.
You were incredibly intelligent. You were kind of reserved, and you were dependable. But I also think that I don't remember, but for some reason in my head, I don't remember what the incident might be, but it seems like we might have bumped heads at some point. Did we? Do you remember?
I'm sure we did, but I remember a lot of embarrassing situations. Just having no idea how to be a leader and kind of getting thrown into E5 position and not knowing even how to be in the dang army. Like, I mean, I joined when I was in my 20s, and I'm just watching all these kids around me get turned into soup and then back into soldiers, and I'm just like, this sucks. But what's everyone? Why is this so important? Well, it's because they're kids. I get it now, but
yeah.
But I didn't know who I was or what to do. I was a chameleon that grew up in, the most ridiculous situations. And so I was just trying to fit in, and no part of me felt like I was succeeding. So what do you like to be called? Like, I think of you as Flock, because in the Army you were Flock.
Yep.
Who are you now?
Well, I am the Orlo. I'm Orlo. But I'm adaptable. I have lots of things. So
perfect.
And I'm not afraid of any of them.
Perfect. Thank you for allowing the interruption. Continue, Orlo. The Orlo. I love that.
So my family was like pioneers. Like, they came across on the Wob wagon train. They're like the people that built, like, where City Hall is in Eugene, they like cleared the ground and built the foundations.
Oh,
right? They built work, especially in that central valley area.
Yeah.
Prineville. And my big family was pretty Norman Rockwell. I mean, my grandmother was like the matriarch of the local church. Essentially, she didn't run the church, but she ran the church. She was that woman,
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather was the leader of the Old Time Fiddlers Association. And so my earliest memories were like big gatherings and music, and like Thanksgiving was a massive ordeal, and Christmas was a big deal, big families, but it was also like the entire community, right? It was square dances. It was about as Norman Rockwell as you could get. They were farmers and they were woodsmen, and they believed in hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but first off, they were hunters. And if you wanted to get like clout inside my family, you got that clout through hunter prowess. And I'm not talking about like trophy hunting. I'm talking about like the ability to provide, right? The self-reliance. And then the other way to get clout in my family was storytelling. So I grew up listening to storytelling, big game stories and folk stories. Like, my nuclear family was not so cozy. My mom was, she is, and always has been, essentially incapable of being happy with status quo. My mom hasn't owned a car for more than 6 months in my entire life. She's moved through multiple houses, multiple jobs, and she's not happy with herself. She's not happy with relationships. She's not happy with the men in her life, including my father, which essentially just meant like chaos, right?
Yes.
And on top of that, she is a people pleaser, which really just meant more chaos, right? But she also taught me a lot. Like, she had a big love of life, and she would just go to parties like unannounced, right? She had a little bit of a flair for like breaking social customs. And she taught me that. My father, he recently died, actually, this last year. And he was probably the smartest man that I had ever met when it came to like earth sciences. He was the kind of guy that, you'd point out like a shrew on the ground, and he would be the one that would say, "Oh, that's a New Routridge's Gibbs eye," and he just knew it off the top of his head. He was actually world renowned in the birding world because he actually had a golden eagle. And when they actually stopped the whole, when they passed a law that you couldn't have, the white people couldn't own eagles and couldn't have eagles or birds of prey. He actually had a golden eagle at the time and had multiple other birds of prey that he was just grandfathered with. And so he kind of became this world-renowned guy in the bird world. But although he was never diagnosed with it, I'm almost positive he was autistic. He was on the spectrum of some sort, right?
Right.
He was good at everyday tasks, but he just couldn't tell when the person he was talking to was angry with him or displeased with him or happy with. He couldn't tell. He didn't know who he was talking to emotionally. He didn't make an emotional connection, right? He was a rock, but he wasn't there emotionally.
Was that a generational thing? Do you believe?
It's part of it, but I think my dad was.
Just before I lose that, when you say your big family, you talking about storytelling, is that on your dad's side or your mom's side?
Dad's.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
my mom's side is pretty small.
Okay, perfect. And the reason I ask is because what I'm seeing is that you got some powerful storytelling from your dad's side and some powerful break out of the mold from your mom's side, which just makes perfect sense. Anyway, go ahead.
Exactly. Yep. So when I was 6 years old, my mom and dad got a divorce, which, I didn't see coming at the time, but I think any other person in our life actually saw it coming for years. Right? But I didn't because I was 6. And it was like the golden child. I was like a goody two shoes. Like I was the one that you could always depend on, right? I was like the good little kid. I'm from Mayberry.
Yes.
And
I resemble that.
My mom and dad got divorced. The way I dealt with it was I doubled down on that. And I became more perfect and more yes. And I kind of created this self-righteousness around it. And I want to bring up religion because I had just knowing you a little bit, I have a feeling we may end up straying towards religion. So while we're here in the backdrop, I'll kind of touch on it. My mom was religious and she was essentially a Baptist Christian. There wasn't any big, crazy kind of Christianity. It was really just kind of quiet, do the right thing, read your Bible. And then that kind of Christian. They didn't door knock or anything along those lines.
My dad would have called that mainstream Christian.
Yeah, that's perfect. My dad, it's funny. He was a Christian. If you asked him my whole life, if you'd asked him, he'd say he was Christian. But he also was an extreme evolutionist, and he was scientific kind of mind through and through. Skipping forward, later in my life, I actually pinned him down and said, hey, how do you put Christianity and evolution together? And he had this super interesting, Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. Cain slew Abel, and then Cain was forced into the forest, right? And there, Cain took a wife, and to my father, the wife that Cain took was not a child of God, but was essentially a great ape of some sort. And so Cain lended his DNA, his godly DNA, to this great ape, and thus created the Homo sapiens that we are today. So we're half God, half. And that's how he rationalized it. And he just never looked back. He didn't dig into it. He just go oh, that's the rationalization. And if you ever question further than that, you just didn't have an answer. Right. So he was a Christian, but he never went to church. And he kind of hated going to church. Mostly now, he just hated being in contact with a bunch of people, really. Right. He didn't understand it. And so he just stayed away from it. So as a kid, I kind of had this choice of I could go to church with my mom to Sunday school and eat cookies. That's kind of the way I thought of it. Or I could stay home with dad and garden and mow the lawn. And I tended to stay home with dad and mow the lawn, but every once in a while I'd go for cookies. But there was never a lot of pressure on me either way. So I never had any real connection to the church. I was kind of looking at it more as an onlooker. So when I was 13, something big happened to me, and it kind of started the next chapter of my life. Before I go there, the lessons I kind of learned about myself in this earlier chapter was mom's fire and passion and in a little bit of rule breaking, like you said, my father's love of nature and his complete hands-offness gave me the curiosity and the freedom to explore and love nature. And that duality between my parents, the hot and cold, kind of left me, I knew it even then, that I was really capable of connecting with people and reading a book.
Because you had to stay safe.
Yeah. I don't know. I was never like unsafe. Like my father never hit me.
But emotionally safe, because otherwise you don't know what's going on or what's going to broadside you. I'm just guessing here. Okay.
No, you're right. I wanted to be like the blameless, good kid, right? And so that meant in every area, I had to kind of bend to fit into wherever crevice there was, right? I would just mold myself into that world, and that made me capable of like understanding the emotions of people, I guess. And that bigger family gave me that love of self-reliance and work ethic. And it gave me a little glimpse of what in my later life, I wanted for a family.
How did you avoid becoming an unbalanced codependent, like becoming such a chameleon that you had no will of your own, that you didn't even know? Because even when I knew you, I didn't see any of that in you.
Well, that's what's about to happen.
Oh, I'm getting ahead of the story.
No. The problem that I had in my life with who I was entirely dependent on how other people's viewed me.
Yes.
There wasn't any self in me. I was entirely external, like forces made me who I was. I was like 13. I don't know how old I was, probably like 5th or 6th grade. I don't even remember the incident, but now after the divorce, I had become this kind of like super tight, rule following, asshole, self-righteous kid.
Yep.
And worse than that, I kind of look back, I'm like disgusted with who I was, but I was 13. Like
yes.
I give myself a lot, room. But I now know that I was utilizing the rules to my own advantage, right? To look good.
Yes.
I was like tattling on other kids to look good. And I remember like kind of building strategies on how to like use the rules to favor me. And that led to an incident. And once again, I don't remember what actually happened, but I essentially had tattled on somebody and they had broken the rules. But the actual act of tattling on the person was immoral.
Yes.
And I wish I knew what it was, but I knew that the act of tattling on this kid was actually a worse thing in the world than what the kid had done. Right. And I remember people just hating me for it.
Yes.
But I recognized it clear as day because I was this perfect kid. I was in my perfect cleaned room and I was actually cleaning a bookshelf, like what 13-year-old kid cleans a bookshelf. Well, I was cleaning a bookshelf and getting all the dust off of it. And I was beating myself up over this whole thing. And I just realized that I fucking hated myself. And I like stopped cleaning the shelf mid shelf. And it was the first time that I ever remember essentially like self-auditing, right?
Can you just give like a quick little description of what you mean by self-audit?
I guess it's the first time I looked at myself, like as if I was holding up a mirror and looking at myself and like,
I see.
Just who the hell are you?
Okay. So when you say self-audit, what I'm feeling is it's the first time you actually step back and looked at yourself from the outside. Tried to look at yourself through other people's eyes. Okay.
You and why are you here? And it wasn't that fleshed out at the time. I was 13, but it was just like, what the fuck are you doing?
You're right that most people don't do that at 13. Do you think that it was just the embarrassment of that situation was intense enough? Like, what triggered you to actually look at yourself from the outside? Because your mind has an uncanny ability to twist the facts to look like something else. What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I'd like to say that I think something else would have gotten me there at some point anyway, because
Yes.
I do remember that time in my life, and I kind of remember multiple times being an asshole and like not actually liking myself afterwards. And it was just that one that it was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So from there, I kind of just stopped. That in my head, it was just like, you're going to stop. And I just started questioning every rule. And it came back to this situation, right? I was like, the actual act of following the rule was less moral than what was happening in the real world. It's the first time that I recognized that as well. And so I started questioning every rule. And to clarify, I wasn't like aggressively opposing every rule. I was just questioning it. If it suited me, I would follow it. But if I was going to get in trouble, or it was going to be someone was going to get hurt, or there's a lot of rules that make sense, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would follow the rules that made sense. And if it weren't, I would just not. And I kind of started into like a default of not follow all soft rules, right?
Yes.
Like if it was a soft rule, I would just not follow it. And so over the next, I don't know, couple, 2 or 3 years, I kind of turned this shit as like stinky, dirty, easygoing, goofy kid that was always late for everything. I kind of, in the same time, I started playing with humor, right? So I dealt with uncomfortability with humor. Right?
Okay.
With that kid, he became even more of a chameleon, right? So now I was fitting in now because I could realize that I could fit in, because the self-righteous kid couldn't fit into social groups, but now I was fitting into social groups, right?
Yeah.
And I was still, when I was talking to an adult or someone in charge, I was still chameleon in. I was just taking I was being water. I was just taking the path of least resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all of the time, the inside me was watching the reactions. I was aware of what I was doing. But the crazy part is, I got almost zero reaction from all of the adults in my life, right? My mom she was divorced. My dad had custody of us, so she was too far out of our life. My dad, once again, was emotionally just not tuned in. And the teachers were too busy being teachers, Sometimes they'd, come up to me and say, hey, you can work here a little bit, but they wouldn't push. I think they just were like, well, Orlo must be going through a hard time. And they just left it, right? And to my friends, it was a welcome change to the people that I loved and spent time with every day. So that was good. But to me, it was this vast change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it made me go, holy fuck, I can be anything I fucking want to be.
Yes.
So I don't know, like I was kind of like this dirty, stinky kid for 3 years or something. But then, when I was 16, 17, like there was like girls, these creatures from another planet.
Yep.
And I realized I kind of wanted one of them. And I also realized that being a dirty, stinky kid wasn't going to cut it. So I swung like a pendulum to the other end of the spectrum. And once again, no one even noticed except for me and few of my close friends, just like, oh, you're kind of cleaned yourself. You got a haircut, And I tried that on for, I don't know, a year or so and got some girls. And then I realized that I was a little too tight, right? And then I swung like a pendulum back the other way and became too loose again, and then too tight, and then too loose. And at some point, the pendulums, it didn't stop. It's still swinging today a little bit, but it narrowed in on me, right? Who I am. It got honed during this time, and like who I was. And now I was like this good-natured, curious kid that didn't give a fuck about your silly rule and was still dealing with uncomfort through humor, which turns out is a pretty good way to deal with things when you're in high school. You made you a lot of friends. Other things that were happening in my life at this time were like, I didn't really ever get any money from my parents after I was like 13 years old. So I had a ton of jobs. And I learned that I loved working, but I also learned that I hated the loss of freedom that came with it. But there was a truth from my forebears, right? That you have to work hard. That's the only way to get ahead.
Have to do the work.
You have to do the work. That's that's the only way.
Yes.
Right. And I got involved in Boy Scouts. And so the woodsmanship that I got out of Boy Scout, combined with the woodsmanship that I got from my family and the hunting and all of that living in the woods. Like I was in a hunting camp when I was 6 months old.
Wow.
All of that, it gave me like an immense amount of self-reliance. And I kind of, from very early age, I remember actually I was working for Les Schwab and I was working with this guy who he threw his back out and was crippled for months because he was throwing a tire and it just spun into a pile of like flesh on the floor. He broke his back multiple times.
Yes.
And I just remember thinking, wow, this is not for me. At the same time, I kind of had this thing in the back of my head, like, hey, if you ever hate this so much, you could just, you have the capability to just go in the woods and just live a good life. And, and I was reading books at the time. I was reading a lot of like literature. And one of them, there's a book called The River Why. It's like Catcher in the Rye meets Mountain Man kind of thing. He's like, fuck it. He just goes out and he goes fishing and he lives a beautiful life. Right. So that kind of captivated my imagination. So I was like, well, if push comes to shove, I can just go live in the woods. And because I was not focused on what other people wanted me to be focused on, like I didn't have to be a good student anymore. I didn't have to do all the things because I didn't fucking follow the rules. It left me capable of like doing the things that I loved, which was, acting, music, and those kinds of things. And those gave me the capability and the courage to be in front of an audience and hone that read the crowdedness. And those, along with the humor and the self-reliance, gave me like a certain audacity that I didn't realize was going to be such an important part of my life at the time. But now I see that as a huge piece of me, was that audacity, right? That whole just kind of big, gregarious, goofy ass character that I kind of was putting on, but was truly me.
Did it kind of feel like you were sometimes doing things you didn't necessarily want to be doing as you searched for yourself, but you did not feel stuck because you had this reliance in yourself, this knowledge that you could make it no matter what your situation, even just lost in the woods. So it made the walking through the difficult things easier. That's kind of what I'm putting together from what you're saying.
Yeah. It was kind of like the bumpers went up at the bowling. You can't
yes. Yes. Okay. I love that analogy.
So it's still like the same chapter, but now the whole high school thing kind of came to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my friends, because my friends were super smart, beautiful people, but they all had these fucking plans. They all wanted to be doctors and lawyers or engineers. Even the lazy ones were like, extremely talented musicians and stuff like that. And I didn't have, nothing. I didn't have any grades, and I didn't even apply for college. In fact, I wouldn't have even graduated high school except for my girlfriend's mom, who happened to be the English teacher, kind of locked me in the basement to finish my senior project. But I don't think I'd have graduated in high school if it wasn't for her. And I saw that she was, it was for my own good, at least decided it was for my own good. So I disliked that. So, but I graduated high school, but I didn't have really anything to go after that. So a buddy and I, we stayed for like a year in Pranville and essentially played video games and stayed up all night and didn't do anything. And then one day we got the wild hair. We were going to move to the big city, like Eugene. And this is like a huge fucking thing in my head. And it was huge. Like, none of my family, my people ever in Triangle, Oregon, people stay in Triangle, Oregon. They never leave.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this big kind of crazy, like, we're going to go out and do this crazy thing. We moved to Eugene. And at some point, my mother, she was dating some guy, and he was kind of a big wig, like a stockbroker guy. And they had bought tickets to go to Belize. And the stock market was crashing, so he won't stay back. And so they rushed to get me a emergency passport. And a few days later, I was on a plane to Belize for the first time out of the country.
Mm.
And that had a huge effect on me. And that it just really made me realize that this is a big fucking world. It's full of really interesting, crazy ideas that I didn't even know existed. And I knew that I had a taste for them, but I didn't really know what I was seeking in them. But it gave me a glimpse of what I wanted in the world, and that there was something big. But the problem was money. In order to travel, you need to have some way to make money in the process. So I kind of created this new goal, which was to start traveling. I wanted to travel out of the country every single year, even if it was just across the border and back. It didn't matter. And it didn't even matter what border, as long as I left the United States once a year. So it kind of started this process of me working, saving, and then traveling. And so I started traveling through a lot of Central and South America, and just loving every minute. And other places too, but mostly in Central and South America. And I'd always been in love with National Geographic. And I came across an article that basically said that in every National Geographic expedition, they needed to have a medic with them. And they're going into the deep, dark places in the world, right? They had to have a medic with them. It was usually a military medic. And that planted a seed in my head. I wasn't afraid of the military. So I have this reoccurring thing that happens in my life. And that's, if I kind of feel stuck, I typically do like something big and fucking crazy.
Yes.
Because it just breaks everything and breaks all the molds and forces me out of things, right?
Yes.
And so I decided I was going to join the military. And I thought I was going to join the Marines, actually, the Corps. And this is all with the goal to get into the National Geographic.
Wow.
A friend of mine actually convinced me to join the National Guard. And I was like, oh, well. Oh, and the other perk was free college, right? Because I still had this looming thing, like, what's your career going to be, young man? You know, because I've been kind of gallivanting around the world and not had any like pathway into the future.
You have to pick your work.
Exactly. So I was like, well, I'll go through the military and I'll get free school, right? I ended up joining the National Guard. And I just found that the military was so fucking easy. It was like a big game. And I immediately, because I was in that whole rule era of my life, I immediately learned which rules were helpful and enforced on a day-to-day basis and which rules I could slide on. And then I came back for basic and AIT, and that's when I was working at Target as an undercover for security, as you said. And yeah, so I would just spend all my time in the electronics department just reading books, essentially. And it started with me just reading sci-fi, and then I read all the sci-fi, and then there's a purple book of me with Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that is going to start the next chapter of my life, really. So this section of my life, like 13 years old to like 23 years old, was essentially all about questioning rules. And I also found that not only were some of them not relevant, some rules were actually engineered to harm you, the rule follower, right?
Yes.
And I also learned that people as a whole don't give a flying fuck what you're doing from moment to moment. Like,
yes.
The people that you meet in the street, it's very unlikely you'll ever fucking meet anyone again, right?
Yes.
And so you don't have to live for anyone else, and you don't stand out by being someone else. In fact, you get noticed by being authentically you.
Yes. Because above all else, the world craves that which is unique.
Exactly. And I think I learned that in this early time.
Yeah.
And it was a freedom Yeah, that I don't think most people at my age, 23, had really, and I actually learned it probably earlier.
I mean, I heard you start learning it at 13.
Yeah. And that self-reliance also, like, it's instrumental in allowing me to, yeah, like I said, take risks. The big problem in my life still, though, was like money, right? Which brings us to Rich Dad Poor Dad. If any of your listeners haven't read it, you better hurry. You know, when I was a kid, there was only you did hard work and you saved money. In fact, the only two pieces of advice my father ever gave me about money was to save and to not spend more money than you ever made, right?
Mhm.
You didn't have a credit card. You paid with cash or check, you know, the
Yes.
checkbook in the back pocket. And to narrow that whole book down, the radical idea in it is that money is not some magical thing that you are born into, right? That money is a tool. And I had never actually given that much thought to money. Money is, you know, it's evil. That's what everyone said. You had too much money, you're a bad guy, right?
Yep.
And so I just realized that I'd been carrying around this tool, small one, the whole time, but I'd been using it like a hammer when I should have been using it with finesse, like a scalpel, right? And so coming out of reading that book, I mean, right off the bat, everyone I talked to, you know, said it wasn't going to work, that it was just total bullshit.
Yep.
I self-doubted myself, and I started doing a little of my own research, and I was like, holy shit, I think this is like a real thing. And pretty soon I could clearly see a path to financial freedom, which was my box, through businesses and real estate. And the other thing that that book did, not directly but indirectly, was it called into my mind the whole hard work, save, don't spend mentality. Wrong. In fact, they were worse than wrong. They were actually harmful to me. They were the opposite of what I should be doing.
The best way to stay inside of that system is to see it that way. Yes.
Exactly. And I was in this whole question all rules kind of thing for the last 10 years. And now I'm like, oh, but it's more than just the rules. It's like my internal rules, right? Because that was a foundational thing, right? It was like, I never even questioned. It was like, you had to work hard to save money. It was like, it was built in. And then it was eroded and washed away to sea when I read this book. And then I started looking at the rest of my foundation. And I started thinking, holy shit, not only can they be questioned, but I need to start seriously questioning everything that I think. And so I started reading voraciously. And as soon as you start reading voraciously, there's all sorts of ideas that are just, when you come from a small town, they just blow your socks off, right? You're just like, how could even anyone think about that kind of stuff, right?
Yes. You start to change.
Yeah, exactly. I started really digging deep about literally everything that I thought. And, you know, the symptom of that is I started to sound like a complete fucking kook to a lot of people. But quietly, that kind of led me into, I'd never been a drug kid. I'd always been the good kid. I mean, I tried pot. I drank a little. I just didn't have any need or want to try, you know, any quote unquote hard drug.
Yes.
But then I ended up with some buddies, and they ended up taking some mushrooms and some acid, and it slowed the whole fucking world down, and it made my brain bigger. First time I did it. It was actually a lot like traveling the world, right? It gave me a sense of connection to the world around me. And it just allowed my brain to be open to so much more of the world. Just open. It just opened me. And I knew that I could trust myself to play with these ideas and not fuck anything up. Does that make sense?
It makes incredible sense to me because I have quite a bit of experience with mushrooms, less so with acid, but I've tried it. The question is, how did it do that? Like, these are just very general terms about it opened my mind up, and I know exactly what you're talking about, but why did it open your mind up? How did it open? What was your experience?
God, it's so hard to say.
because I hear people talking about it in all different sorts of ways. Some people say it's almost like they're saying that there's little fairies that live in the mushrooms and whisper stuff to you. And so I'm just wondering, in your experience, in your emotions, what are the mechanics even of it?
My experience was essentially like just being extremely connected on an energetic level with everything, right? And it was accompanied with almost a body high that allowed me to essentially like float above the ground as I was walking. It made me feel like a part of the universe.
Okay. Like a part as in you didn't know where you ended and the rest of everything else began. It just was all became one thing. Okay.
And it was also a glimpse of something where I'm at now, which is like that I am that tree.
Yes. It's almost like you've synthesized that, seeing yourself as part of everything outside of the mushroom experience.
Well, I hadn't at the time. I don't think I'd spent a lot of time really considering that at the time. But what that did outside of the experience was it reinforced this kind of recent quest that I was on. There is so much to learn that I just don't know anything. I have to dig and really, really learn about the world because I was at that time that I just realized that I don't fucking know anything about the world. I don't know who the fuck I am, and I don't know why I am. I don't know anything, and not in a scary, sad way, but in a exciting, curious way.
Okay, so it's not like you were exploring because you're like, I have to learn this stuff, or something bad. It was like, what the heck is all of this? This is fascinating. I can't stop myself from wanting to learn.
Yes.
Okay.
So not too long after, I think still before I met you, or maybe about the time that I met you, there was a financial crash again. The funny thing is now I'm super tuned in with financial crashes. I had no idea what it was over as a time. And Target, actually, they bought me out of my contract. They had to fire me. They couldn't fire me, apparently. There was some kind of something that made them, so they had to pay me like $6,000, which was a shit ton of money to me at the time. And at the same time, I got like the second half of my sign-on bonus, which was like $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I had like this money all of a sudden, and I didn't have a job. And I started a business, actually a brewery there in Eugene. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but during that time, it started me down a path of entrepreneurship, really learning like how money works and how I can contribute to the world. And I had this plan to like save up and buy real estate. So yeah, so that was the time that I met you. So
you were always talking about going to the brewing shop and stuff like that. So I didn't remember that until you said that. And I do not remember you ever mentioning any sort of hallucinogenics or drugs that I can remember.
So I kept it, especially in the military, I kept it pretty well. When I was in the military, I only did mushrooms and LSD because they wouldn't show up on the drug test. Although every single time we got a drug test, man, I would just sweat bullets for
And you're especially not going to talk about that around somebody who appears to be quite reserved and, you can't really necessarily get a feel for.
But I think if we'd have had that conversation, I'd have probably had that conversation.
Yeah.
But it just
I would have judged the hell out of you. So I'm really glad that because I was definitely more upright than you. I was more holy than you, for sure.
Yeah. So this was kind of towards the end of this chapter, I was just stuck in the mud, and I didn't know why. But I had I have a lot of friends that were just like, they just didn't understand who the fuck I was.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't talk to really anyone in the military about it.
Mm-hmm.
We, even my close friends, they didn't have any problems with the psychedelics, but I couldn't talk to them about business or like you said, these hacks, these idea hacks that I was kind of coming up with.
Right.
And really digging into myself. And they either just didn't get it or I couldn't convince them.
Yeah, it's never going to work. What are you doing?
He's just talking to a brick wall. They were just trying to do their thing,
It didn't spark the same thing in them.
And at the same time, I was with this girl who we've been together for quite a few years. And she had this goal that she wanted to be married by the age of 30. She's like, I have to be married by the age of 30. She was actually older than me, I think. And she was coming up on her 30th birthday. And I didn't really think I loved her, but I also had no fucking clue what being in love with someone meant, really.
Yep.
But I was like, also, I do love her, and I'm not getting married to her. I'm just being an asshole, right? And if I don't love her and I get married to her, well, I mean, that's what she wants. And once again, I didn't care too much about the rules about the whole thing. And I'm sure as I didn't give a fuck what the state thought about it. We haven't really tied religion back into it, but I also didn't really give a fuck the religious aspects of it. I just saw marriage as a piece of paper, essentially, that could be broken at any moment. It was about this time that we found out that we were going to Iraq. And so I was like, well, fuck it, stop being an asshole, Orlo, and just marry this girl. So I married this girl just before we went to Iraq. I sold the business that I had to a friend, and I left. Which brings us really kind of to the end of this chapter in the way that I think about it in my head. From the age of 23 to 29, I essentially learned that I could be a money magician, right? And I learned that ideas are always fluid and that they can be changed with intent, and that all of the ideas in the world need to be questioned, and that the world is vast and super connected and needs to be explored. In my box right then was these kind of shitty relationships and a lack of momentum that they kind of fostered. Right? So I went to Iraq, and the first half of Iraq, I was doing convoys. I was just shitty job. Whole crew underneath me, and that's what I did every single day.
That's a medic.
As a medic, yep. And I don't know if you remember Ramirez, but Ramirez was running the combat hospital.
He was our PA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was running the BAMC, for your listeners. That'd be like the MASH hospital.
Yeah.
Way less fun shenanigans.
Headquarters. And Sergeant Ramirez jumped off of a Connex and he broke his leg. And so he was getting shipped out of the country. And so it kind of left me and a couple other guys. And we essentially had to step into this role, which was a much higher rank than us. We still had 4 or 5 guys that I was also in control, running. And I was still the main medic for one of the companies at the time. And my guys were just fucking they were ragged. There was just not enough medics to go around. You probably, I remember.
And they were just literally, they'd get out of a Connex, so they'd been on for 18 hours, and they would start out of a truck, get in another truck, and just go to sleep in the back and sleep for hours.
Yeah.
Right? They're just constantly in the back of trucks. And headquarters, the leadership post, where they get all the fancy paint stuff and all the planning and all that stuff. They decided that the medics, were going to man the desk at this post from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. every night. And of course, it went down to my guys, but I could just tell that my guys just couldn't do it. Right. And so I kind of had this posh job at the BAMC. And so I was still working 12 hours a day, but I got to go home and I got to go to the chow hall every night.
Yeah.
And so I started volunteering for these sessions, and I'm guarding this brick building at 12 a.m. and you can't fall asleep because the only people that walk through that door are full bird colonels or general. Hell, the president of the United States could have walked through that door.
Yep.
And so you couldn't fall asleep. You had to be aware. You had to be alert, and you were sitting at a desk. 12 to 3 a.m. And the first night, I did a whole bunch of doodles and thought, well, fuck, I need to get something next time. And I went to one of the, where the handout shit there on the base, and they had a library, and they had a book that was called Atlas Shrugged. And I had seen the book in my past, but I didn't know where I seen it. It was actually, I later found that it was like my friend's mother's library. I seen it, but I picked up that book and I took it to this post and got settled in, and I cracked it open, and it was a profound effect. Up until this time, I had all of these ideas swirling around in my head, but I didn't really trust them completely, because I had this idea also that there's so much to learn in the world that all of the ideas were kind of soft rules. They were all things that could change literally in a moment, but I kind of fleshed out this like group of rules that I was trusting myself with, but they were all written in a really light pencil, right? Like I could just erase them and put them in. And
you were not attached to any of them.
I wasn't attached to any of them, even though I had like a core group of rules that I'd had for a long, long time. And Atlas Shrugged made me break my pencil in half and start writing pen.
Yes.
And not only did it echo these ideas that I had been forming on my own for years, but it presented them in a simpler and more elegant way. And it drove to a deep, deep, deep self-trust of my own person, right? And that self-trust gave me a new breath of life. It's like I'd been driving a Ferrari with a parking brake on my whole life, right? And I just got rid of the parking brake. And not only that, but it allowed me to realize that this nimbly-bimbly group of rules that I'd kind of been hodgepodging together all my life was not just a group of rules. It was this word that they threw around in my high school called philosophy. It was a philosophy, right? And that meant that it wasn't just a group of rules. It was a lens on how you could look at the entire world. And right off the bat, there's a character. You've read it, right?
I have. On your recommendation, finally I read it. I've been having that book recommended. My family very much likes that book, and it's been recommended to me my whole life.
There you go.
Yep.
So there's a main character in that book. This is Reardon. And Reardon lives a moral life, right? He's a guy that he works hard and he does the right thing.
Yes.
But he allows people in his life, his wife and his mother, to live by another set of rules that are not moral. And he spends the whole book going, well, it doesn't matter. I can just blast through this, right? I'm a powerful individual. But it was actually him allowing them to lead shitty lives around him that ended up being ultimately his destruction. And it became crystal clear to me that I needed to remove certain people in my life. Also, that book gave me a deep self-accountability, and it forced the destruction of the victim in me.
Yes.
So that the person who would blame anything on anyone else, right? It allowed me the ability to just seek that part of me out in every corner of the me being. And it's taken me years, but I burned the shit out of that guy. He doesn't exist. Well, he probably does. He's probably in there lurking in some corners, but every single time he pops up, I go on another destructive rampage.
Time to change everything. Let's go.
Yep.
Yes.
And it allowed me to see that self-reliance and my self-sovereignty could be destroyed by dependencies on other people.
Yes.
And that gave me a new unbridled freedom that I could be a whole person.
Yes.
It gave me the ability to say, I don't fucking need anything. Not from powerful. Well, it was powerful, but not from.
Well, it sounds like narcissism. Like you don't need anything. Like you don't want anybody. I am enough for myself, and I don't need anybody. So fuck you all. That's what people hear when I use those words.
Yeah, but it's not that. It's actually the opposite.
The opposite.
Because I don't need you, I allow you can be any fucking thing you want.
And I get to
that
just
doesn't mean I'm going to stay around you.
But if I do stay around you, it's because I just purely appreciate you. I can only do that because I don't need you.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can say I am in love with you without first being able to say I am.
Yes.
Right.
And if you don't, I think what you're saying is if you don't know who I is, then that whole sentence is a lie.
Yeah.
And if there's something you need outside of yourself, then you can't possibly know fully who you are. So I don't know. I'm getting a little abstract there, but you know what I'm saying?
So when I came back from Iraq, I started stripping people like barnacles off my shit. And it was a rough time. It was a time that I broke some hearts.
Yes.
I divorced my wife. I mean, I wasn't mean about it. I just stopped calling people that I realized were dragging me down. It's like you're a fighter jet and you've got like garbage cans attached to your wings with duct tape, right? I just started cutting the duct tape garbage cans off.
Okay, so those garbage cans, like I'm guessing that these were mostly pointed at people who you didn't feel like could accept you as you went through all these changes, that just simply liked you for you, but wanted you to be a particular version of yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and garbage cans, I shouldn't use garbage cans. I didn't see them as garbage cans.
Sure.
They were just people in my life that they wanted me to be the version of me that I was in their head, right?
Yes.
And for some reason, I was still catering to that. And it gave me the ability with the people that I really deeply cared for to just go, nope, this is me. And you have to either accept me or don't. And that's okay too.
Were you afraid you were becoming a narcissist?
No, never. I don't feel, I've always been narcissistic.
Because you're human. What you're describing is finding boundaries. You're describing realizing that you get to be whoever you want to be and you're never going to be able to satisfy what everyone wants anyway. So in the process of finding boundaries, everyone in your life is going in some way or the other going to tell you you're unbalanced, you're becoming a narcissist, you're an asshole, you don't care about anyone, you're a lone wolf, and it's all slung at you and stuff. So how did all that make you feel, or how did you deal with that?
For the most part, I think it was pretty easy. The people that were really close to me, like my mother, it was hard for her actually because she really wanted me to be the good kid that I was. And I was still a good kid, but I wasn't a yes man anymore. I was she's like, you should really come to my niece's kid's birthday party or something. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be there. Like it just didn't appeal to me at all.
Yeah.
But she thought that I should do it from like some family duty, or she has a lot of ideas around duty to God, but especially family duty.
Yes.
And I just was like, nope.
Yeah.
If it makes sense for me, then yes, I'm there. But if it doesn't make sense for me, I'm just not going to do it.
You've got to do the work, or how else are you going to be safe emotionally? How else are you not going to be left alone?
I essentially stopped self-sacrificing.
Yeah.
Is what I did. And it was hard for some people. The majority of people in my life, though, it wasn't that hard. I saw with my wife, I saw it like clear as day, and it was not hard at all. I mean, it was actually painless because what it did was it freed her up to be who the hell she wanted.
Yes. Oh my
goodness. We were both
goodness.
living this fucking lie.
Yes. Yep.
So it was hard. It's hard to tear off that Band-Aid, but it was the right thing. I knew it, and she didn't know it at the time. And I don't know, I'm not going to put words in her mouth, right? But this was also, the time that I came out of the military. So the divorce, I moved to Portland, and I love starting from scratch, right? And that's what it gave me. I kind of moved away from all of the people I hung out with on a day-to-day basis. I moved jobs. I was still doing the same thing, but I moved jobs, and I was out of the military. Like I kind of just a bunch of things changed all at the same time, and I became a new me. I was allowed to be my new self.
New worldview, new setting. Yep, makes sense.
Exactly. And so I started really digging into real estate and learning how to buy a house. And I actually got my first duplex. I just got it under contract, actually. And I was like feeling pretty good about myself. It'd been probably 6 months since I'd been out of the divorce. And I realized that I had kind of very few friends. I was super happy with the friends I had, but I had kind of very few friends. Right. And I decided I wanted like a girl.
Yes.
And at the time, because I was working for security, I couldn't, that you have to actually sign a contract that you said you couldn't date any of the people that you work with. Crushed every woman that I knew at the time. And I wasn't going to date my housemates, And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to go to a bar and try to pick up a woman, And that felt, kind of sleazy to me. And so this was right when these internet dating apps like became a thing. And this is long before Tinder and swipe left, swipe right. Like, I went to one that was called OkCupid.
Yes, I remember that name.
These for dating apps. Make profile. It's about what books you liked, movies you liked, and then it gave you a quiver arrow and it tried to match you. But it was an algorithm that was, it was 2010. So the algorithms were not very good. But I got to avoid all of that because I built this kind of stupid profile. They were completely using no correct data. Like I said that I was 3,700 years old, reincarnation of, 50 different people.
Oh man.
Just to see what it was like. And then I realized that there's a search bar. Right? And you could just type in like green eyes and it would bring up all the girls in Portland with green eyes. And I was like, oh shit, this is like Google, but for single women. And I was like, what is here's a dating tip to all of you single people out of there. But I was like, how do I use this? How do I leverage this? And so I had literally just hit, go on my profile and I was like, well, I wonder if like what ties me to another person. And I just had this new thing in my life called philosophy. Right.
Yes.
And so you put your favorite books in. So I just typed in Atlas Shrugged into the search engine. Right. And it brought up like 30 women in the Portland area. And 20 of them hated Atlas Shrugged so much that they put it in their profile. And that left like 10 women that liked Atlas Shrugged. I just literally clicked on the prettiest one and I wrote her a message and I said, hey, the whole internet thing says that we might not be horrible for each other. Tell me it's wrong. And she wrote back, no, it might not be wrong, but I don't do this whole internet dating thing. We have to meet in real life. And I was like, great, let's do it. And she picked the spot and it was a Frank Sinatra dress up place. And I went on a date with her and we shut down 3 or 4 bars that night. And we talked philosophy and science and nature and everything all fucking night. And then I married. She was like that's I'm talking about my current wife, Kay.
Yes.
Was the mother of my 3 children. And she is essentially, I would make her an entire chapter in my life, except that she's a moving she's with me through multiple parts of it, right? She's the culmination of everything that I've striven towards in my life. She is younger than me, but she has the clearest, most reasoning brain that I've ever met. She's a perfect sounding board. Like she doesn't even have to say anything. I can just say something, right? That's like going on in my head, and just based off of like her facial tick when I say it, I'm like, oh, that's not gonna work. Oh yeah, that's gonna work, right? She's a perfect sounding board.
Yes. How long have you guys been together?
And we started dating right after we got from her. So 2011 we started dating her. So
these are all things that you're saying after more than a decade together.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So what I'm hearing from this is, if you want to have a truly fulfilling relationship, you've got to figure out how to say no to everybody.
Yep. And she's got to be able to say no to everyone too.
Yes.
Because she already been down that road. Right? She has a willpower that I will work the rest of my life trying to achieve. Like, she's the kind of person that's like, I'm going to stop smoking. And then she will just fucking stop smoking. Right? Or she will say, I'm going to stop eating dairy products. And she will eat dairy products for the rest of her life until someone slips it in her food. Okay? She probably struggles with it, but you're never going to see the struggle. She has a willpower that is crazy. She is unafraid of pointing out the moment that someone begins to live in a way that's inconsistent with their own beliefs.
She's honest.
She is pure truth, which is so refreshing. And she has her moral compass always points to true north. It's like in a sometimes super enlightening. Here's an example where, like, we were brainstorming like what businesses we wanted to build, and we were actually at one point talking about wanting to build like a secondhand store in Portland. And I was like, hey, and we have like kind of snacks and stuff, just like kind of a grab and go section where people could, grab some snacks and food. And she's like, yeah, like healthy snacks. And I was like, yeah, healthy snacks. And I'm like, but healthy snacks, they'll turn fast. They have a short expiration date. We'd have like Coke and stuff like that too. And she's like, no, we won't. And I was like, well, I mean, why not? Like, I don't drink Coke.
People want to buy it.
You don't drink. Yeah, people want to buy it. It's not my job to decide what other people buy and sell in the world. Like, you could, if you want to go destroy your life, that's fine. And she's like, yeah, that is fine, but I'm not going to be the one that sells it to you. And I just like, holy shit, yeah.
Yeah, once you hear it put that way, it's just like, oh, obviously. That would feel like a compromise.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that.
It is a compromise. And she's so good at just like finding that every single time. It's amazing. She's amazing.
I kind of get
the most refreshing play in the playground of the world.
I get the feeling that you really like this girl. Yes.
Yeah. So before Kay, I compared myself to other people. And she's the one that taught me to compare myself to me. Like, I just was toying with this new idea of Alice Shrugged being a whole person, but she's the one that actually taught me how to be that person. So lead up to my own ideals, my own standards, and to find my own truths.
Yes. And someone that's going to stand toe to toe with you and challenge you. Is there anything more valuable?
Yeah. If you see anything that's like, she's not going to just like go, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if she doesn't know, she will, but she's never going to just like walk away. When I talked about that victim, right? She is the one that has really taught me that little tiny lies even to yourself, those are the things that are toxic and kill you.
Mm.
Those are where all disease comes from. Those little tiny lies. On another note, we're also like kind of a power team. I'm the dreamer
Okay.
and she's the doer.
Mm.
So one of the first arguments we'd ever had was she had in her head that she never wanted to own a business. She never wanted to be a leader of people because she felt that she couldn't. Like she felt like being a objectivist meant you don't control other people.
Yes.
And I'm not 100% sure. I can't say that. That's how I assume. That's why she didn't want that. But suffice to say that she didn't want to be a leader, and she also never wanted to be. She never wanted to own real estate. She saw it as a destruction of her freedom to move. Right?
Like it ties her to a spot.
Yeah, and so we just have built this really beautiful like communication and this ability to challenge each other on all sorts of aspects. I would like to say that I've taught her as much as she's taught me, and we learn from each other constantly. Even today, where, we both have a book in hand in bed. She actually, for me, it's almost always audiobooks, but she's like actual pages turner books. And we are every book we have, we kind of share and communicate the ideas that we have gained out of those, even today. And we had just moved into a new home, so a second property for me. And this is 2014. We had made this goal that we were going to build a business, have decided on what business we were going to start by the end of 2014. And a few weeks or a few months later, we found out that she was pregnant with our first child. And we all of a sudden were like, holy shit. We had this, like, for lack of a better term, like come to Jesus moment over a table. We can't go build a business. We need to double down, make money, do the traditional thing. And then because we were both had this audacity, we kind of were like, no, that means we have 9 months to pick what business we are going to make and build it. And we decided on a yoga studio. She taught Bikram yoga, hot yoga. And so we decided on a yoga studio and we just started going. And actually early on in this whole thing, we ended up going to like a lunch or dinner, like sushi dinner with some people. And there was a guy, a Japanese guy. He was a friend of a friend at this party. English was a second language to him. He said, you need to do later now. He meant it's do now later, right? And everyone kind of giggled about it at the table. But Kay and I had this moment where we just went like, our mouth was open. We just looked at each other and just kind of at the same time, without any words, we just both recognized the profundity of do later now.
Yes.
Right. And it became our slogan for like that year. Like it was just like do later now, just boom, just go. Like don't make it perfect, just make it happen. So
I love that.
The next 9 months there was so much growth. We leaned a lot on my personal experience of being an entrepreneur before, but I was never a real entrepreneur, right? I was a kid building a business that failed.
Yeah.
Right. But now the business that we were getting into was a $6,000 a month lease, which was 3 times my monthly salary on a huge piece of property on a main thoroughfare in Portland. Just the furnace alone was in $5,000, and that's before we did anything. So we did a whole lot of growing up in that, and it was one of the most beautiful times in my life. Now looking back on it, it's just so exciting, fun, and like spitballing ideas and just growing up. We just like turned into adults, right? These little kids that just figured out how to do this thing with no real help. reading books and just going. And we ended up finding all the money and figuring out how to advertise and how to hire personnel and how to train staff and how to monetize ideas, plan events and all the scheduling and coordinating. And I mean, it was $180,000 bill, but it worked. And it took us like 6 months before we broke even, something like that. But we learned how to like crunch the numbers and how to improve our business. We learned a lot of like spreadsheet details. We learned the hospitality. And 2.5 years into that business, I was able to quit my day job because I was supporting the family, at that time. And it was actually right after we had our second baby. And we had this little rinky-dink house. We were just loving every minute of it. It was just like work, hard with little tiny kids, up all night and poop and puke and giggled. And then the next day, just doing it all again. And it was beautiful. That will continue as I quit my day job and I got into real estate and I started doing like investing and just really learning how to hustle. And through the real estate aspect, I really learned how money moves. I'll say statewide level, but really a citywide level. Portland's the biggest city in Oregon. So really, if it's moving in Portland, it's kind of essentially how the whole state moves.
Sure.
And it allowed me to kind of understand the contracts and the law. After doing that for like 2 years, I kind of felt like we were two ships because she was kind of running the yoga business and I was kind of running the real estate business. And she was kind of starting to struggle running the yoga business, even though I was there for her. I was, in there doing things as well. And I was doing the real estate, but I didn't have the doer. I didn't have her doing all of that. So we kind of were running two separate businesses. We were like two ships drifting apart. We just needed to like pull it all back in and refocus. And it was kind of putting a little stress on the household, especially the two kids. And so we went all back in on the yoga studio. And after about a year at that, we were in this spot where we were just ready to knock it out of the park. Like I had on my to-do list, the number one thing on my to-do list was figure out how to get the yoga studio ready for sale. Because we had this kind of dream to sell the yoga studio and like travel the world with kids. That's what we kind of wanted to do. And like literally, if you look at back at my to-do list for March of 2020, that was the number one priority. All right. But March of 2020 was the 2 weeks to flat the curve, right? COVID.
Yes.
And so we were so yoga studios, because God forbid you were helping people. If you were a bar, you could stay open.
Yes.
If you were a store, you could stay open. If you were a restaurant, you could stay open for certain hours. But if you were a yoga studio, nope, no fucking way.
Yeah.
Right? There's not even, you couldn't even build a plan that like, this is how we won't let anyone cough on each other.
Yeah.
You couldn't stay open. Right? You couldn't even stay open in an outside space, as I recall. So we just shut. Right? And 2 weeks turned into 2 months. And we built out an online platform. It was a big flurry of work trying to learn how to build an online platform. And we did. But COVID just kept going, right? 6 more months through the summer. It was actually a beautiful summer because we had 2 young kids. We were out at Sabiato on skate dipping like literally every day. I mean, having children really allows you to live in the present. It really allows you to focus on the little tiny shit and enjoy it and love it. So
Yes.
even though we were like both wondering what the fuck we were going to do, we were also having this kind of beautiful time. I don't know if you remember, in September of 2020, there was like a big fucking fire. I just realized I'm cussing. I'm cussing.
No, that's absolutely okay. Cussing, I think cussing fits into anything that is open emotionally because it just has a lot of emotional weight.
Yeah. So in September, there was a big fire and it just laid flat over Portland. And
Yes.
it got to the point that you couldn't even see across the road.
Yeah.
And I had a 2-year-old at the time. That was Ishika, and he was coughing, started to hack and cough. Right. And I was like, we got to get out of here. And so we booked an Airbnb actually out in the middle of Eastern Oregon, just on a farm somewhere. And the day before we left, it was going to be 2 days later, the day before we left, I called the gal on the Airbnb. She was like, if you're coming here to avoid smoke, this isn't the place. You can't see around here. It was the entire fjord. And so I was like, F it, we're out, right? And I called Kay, and I was like, I found the cheapest flight out of America, and it was to the only place in the world that was open, which was Mexico. It was Guadalajara. And we, like, literally from the time we made the decision to go to the time we were on an airplane was 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Like Kay was like booking an Airbnb as we were taxiing on the runway. And it was super fun and refreshing. We went to Guadalajara, and I was like, "What? We need to do this more often." Like, that was really fun, right? And then we came back to the States, and we were going to be allowed to reopen the yoga studio in November, or actually it was late October. We opened in November, and then late November, they forced us to close again, even though we spent like probably $10,000 just in the making sure that everything was touchless and making sure that there was, plexiglass everywhere and signs up everywhere to stop COVID.
Yeah.
They still shut us down again. But this time, instead of like leading us on, they did the whole, it used to be like, 2 months recovery. This time they were like, well, it's going to be sometime next year. So this is November of 2020. And I mean, the amount of money that we had we were just eating through savings. And a huge amount of our income went away. Not all of it, but a huge amount went away. But our bills stayed exactly the same. And we sat, and, it was like 2 a.m. one time, and we were just like, what do we got to do? We decided, I had actually just read it in our lease that I found a way out of our lease, which is a 10-year lease, and get out. And actually, that whole real estate section was super helpful because I understood contracts. And so I found this way out of our contract, and I was like, where we can leave, because we could sell our house, but if we sold our house, what we're going to do? We couldn't move to Beaverton, or move to Prineville, back to Prine. No, I was like, if we're going to move out of Portland, why don't we move out of state? And they're like, well, if we're going to move out of state, why don't we just fucking go, right? And start over. And so that night we were like, okay. So that was late November. We bought a plane ticket for Cancun, Mexico, to go to Playa del Carmen. We'd never been there, but it was the only place that was open. We bought tickets for January 23rd, and then there was this mad rush of just selling everything in the studio, closing out all our affairs. And I got a little Rubbermaid tote full of photo albums and shit like that. And I handed them off to my buddy. He put them in his basement. And the night before we flew out, we just got the kids all together. We filled some suitcases and we closed them out. The next morning we flew out, just left everything in our house. The day after that, I had a real estate agent come in and he did an estate sale on everything in our house. Little stickers on everything. And the next day they left it burn clean. The next day they took pictures and it was up. The houses up on the market, and we were living in an Airbnb in Playa del Carmen.
Wow.
And that brings us to the end of that chapter, right, of my life. That's whole 29 to 39 years old.
How did you put it? The money making genius years. And I do not want to interrupt your narrative, so we can answer it later. But I'm curious, what are some examples of that when you were just like what did that realization look like? Because I'm out here kind of having a lot of these same realizations and just being like, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in the system. I'm just not going to do it. I know there's a better way. I don't know yet how to get there. I'm starting to get some pretty good ideas, but money does always end up being the clincher. And so I'm curious, how did that look for you? But you've kind of explained some of it, I think.
Yeah, what really comes down to just the magic of money is just finding something that there are things you love in the world, right? That you just love inherently. Like,
yes.
And you can build a business around that, because there's some people in this world that don't love it, right? Or for us, the case of the hot yoga studio, it's something that I can do that all day long. There's nothing is the most moral thing in the world. We have seen like literally thousands and thousands of people that had come through our doors with every problem in the world, with broken legs and bad knees and bad shoulders or messed up back or scoliosis or, lymph issues or internal body issues or depression or can't sleep at night or can't eat correctly. The whole gamut of human suffering has walked through our doors, and I've seen it mixed with hot yoga. And this isn't going to be an advertisement for Bikram yoga, but Bikram yoga, the reason we've devoted 10 years of my life to it is one of the purest, most amazing things on earth. It's not just that it fixes your body and your guts and your systems, it also fixes you. Yeah. Right? Or correction, it doesn't fix you. You fix you, but it gives you the environment to do it. It's hard and it's hot and it's super uncomfortable by design. And while you're going through it, you have to look yourself in the face in a mirror. While you're going through all of the bullshit, and the internal stripes, and you telling yourself you can't do it, and that victim rearing its head over and over and over again, you have to look yourself in the face. So once again, I don't want to turn it into a commercial for Bikram yoga, but
I'm a really big fan of hearing why somebody found or how somebody found healing in the ways, in the modalities that they found it. You found healing there. You offer that healing to the world, and to me, that's what are we going to find that's more worth promoting? Please.
Exactly. Yep. And the funny thing is for me, so I found Bikram yoga because when I met Kay, she was doing a 90-day challenge. She was doing it every day for 90 days. And to be completely honest, I just wanted to get into her pants. The only way I could spend any time out of a Bikram yoga class. When I did so, I don't know what your experience with exercise was as a kid, right? But for me, it was never good, right? And then I joined the military, and exercise was literally punishment, right? Doing push-ups you did push-ups because you got fucked up, right? And so it was something, that I had never really faced. It was something that I had never really dug into. I was digging into all sorts of stuff, but this is one that was one of those truths that I did look at. And the funny thing about yoga, Bikram yoga, is it's super challenging, which is something that I needed. Like I think my ego needed, right? But at the same time, it was the first time I ever did exercise, and it wasn't a chore. The hardest part was walking in the door, and then once you go in the door, this person just talks at you straight for 90 minutes. And if you want to lay down, you lay down. You want to drink water, you can drink water. But I know that I'm not going to, right? But even if you do, you're going to get the benefit.
Mm.
And there has been times that like when I'm sick or when I'm injured, I'll just come in and I'll literally sleep in the class for 90 minutes. And the knowing that you're in a room full of people trying to make themselves better, super powerful.
Yes.
To go back to your question, as far as like businesses, it doesn't really matter. Right? It can be anything. The ingredients are that you love it, and that other people don't always love it, and that, or you're providing some kind of service better than the next person. And then the next ingredient is figuring out how to like systematize it. That's a whole different ballgame. But that second part of the time that we were before COVID, we were systematizing, creating strong standard operating procedures for everything we did. That's like business 201. You don't need to start there. You just need to build it, right?
Yes.
And then systems will come, right? Because you're just going to really, you do something so many times, you're like, okay, we got to do this in a way that repeats itself.
Like
right?
do later now.
Yeah. Do later now.
Yes.
Right. You got to figure out how to replace yourself with a high school kid. And if you can replace yourself with a high school kid, well, you pass the test on that thing. Now figure out how to replace yourself, all the other functions of your business with high school kids. Once you've got that done, you've got a business.
Yeah.
A real business. It's not a job anymore.
And there's many different ways to do business and many different types of businesses. But what I'm gleaning from that in the nugget of the answer is, number one, you're never going to figure it out until you figure out who you are. So number one, you got to figure out who you are. Then once you know that, you're going to start to figure out what you really like to do. Just your personal passion, the thing you came here to do. And then when you're doing that, the money making is just going to come from it. It's just going to flow from it.
Exactly. It has to have that. I'm not being afraid to fail. That has to be part of it beforehand, right?
Yes. After you find out who you are.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I don't know if it's got to stack that way. But
no.
Yeah,
okay.
Going to be part of it. I mean,
still do tomorrow today.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. Okay, so in this section, what did I learn? I learned that you have to break your dependencies from other people, right? You have to be whole to have an unbridled freedom.
Yes.
And that is self-toxic to lie to yourself. I had to trust myself before I trusted anyone else. And then I learned a shit ton about building businesses and community. Something that I right at the end realized was a problem. And that's that I had even though I thought I'd broken all these other dependencies, as I had a dependency on the government, right? I had a dependency on my government allowing me to continue running a business. What I thought was like something not take away. Right? Now I realize that they could and did. So the new chapter, this is a chapter that I'm in right now.
And it started when you flew down to, where did you stay?
Mexico.
Playa?
We're in Playa del Carmen.
Playa del Carmen.
Carmen. Like
Carmen.
Where in the world is Carmen? San Diego.
Yeah. Well, you may not be able to tell, but I didn't really learn geography in school or go to school. So,
I mean, it's a small town. There's not a lot of people. It is fairly well known in the travel world, but I'd never been to Playa del Carmen. I'd been to the little town up the beach once for a retreat, but I'd never spent any time, lived here. I didn't know. It's perfect. She's not perfect. She's like a lady was. So she already knew French and Italian. She grew up in Southern California. She can understand Hebrew and pieces of other languages. So, so she was definitely like the main, when we hit the ground, she was the one that did all the talking for sure. We found ourselves in this to this new place. We've got kids with us. We have way less money, but we also have gotten rid of all of our bills. But I know that we're going to sell the houses, so we're going to have some money coming in, right? And our plan was, we didn't have a plan. The plan was to sit on the beach for 2 weeks, decompress a little, and make a plan, right? That we didn't have. Playa del Carmen was a bustling place, time, and we started getting invited to parties, meeting really kind of interesting people. We realized very early on that Playa del Carmen, it was this vortex of people that had been escaping the governments of the world, right? So all the people that were like, fuck this shit, I'm out. There was only one place that was open in the world, and it was Mexico. And the only people that could do that, that had the capability of doing that, were interesting individuals. So we would go to like we literally would get invited to, we got invited to this like a house party. Guy's house, didn't know anyone. We had nothing better to do. So like, fine. And we go to a house party, but here's the thing, you go to a house party and you'd think you go to a house party in Corvallis or in Eugene. The conversations that you're going to have at that house party, unless it's like a complete fluke of the world, you might end up making like a good, strong connection. You might have fun, but you're probably just going to scrape the surface.
Yes.
It's going to be pretty shallow conversation all around.
Yes.
I mean, those are intelligent, beautiful people, but they're living in a small bubble, right?
Yes.
But these parties here, I very quickly learned that you gotta watch, because the person you're talking to isn't the clerk from a store. He's the guy that builds, digital currencies for the country of Bhutan. And the other guy that's in the circle is one of the leaders of security at Google. The guy over there, is some kind of fintech guy out that runs a venture capital fund in Silicon Valley. And I found myself in conversations that not only were not shallow, but like I literally was like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about. Like the conversation was just like slipping over my head. Like just a little banter. Like someone make a comment and 3 people would laugh, and I'm like they're speaking a different language, but we're speaking English.
Are you saying that all of a sudden you were the dumbest guy in the room?
Yeah, everywhere, right? And I could still meet them. I could still have a conversation with them, but I just realized that I had slipped into a world where they weren't living in Podunk, Prineville, Oregon, right? These were people that were already world travelers. A lot of them, and had a much bigger outlook on the world than I did.
Well connected and knew a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, they were extremely humble, beautiful people, right? In fact, I would say that I met some of my favorite, definitely lifelong friends in the first couple of weeks that we were here at Playa. So after like the first few weeks there, we had that plan. We were going to go figure it out. Tay ended up going down like the path to start coaching. She kind of built a business, working off of another business, coaching yoga studios worldwide to increase their bottom line, because we figured that stuff out. We knew it, right?
Yes.
I was in the process of selling all of our stateside assets and being a band. But while we did that, we were traveling throughout Mexico because once again, it was the only place in the world that was really open at the time, looking for our place. And we looked all over, but I mean, you can't say we looked everywhere because, dude, Mexico is fucking huge.
Yes.
Mexico is huge. It's huge. It's so crazy that I ever had the small version of Mexico in my head because it's massive.
Yes.
But we were looking for like schools and looking at prices and stuff to do. And the weird thing is I found myself homesick, but I wasn't homesick for Oregon. I was homesick for Playa del Carmen, this weird vortex of super hustle, right?
Wow.
And so we came back. He was doing full-time coaching, and I started spending more time in these circles of people. And we just dropped the kids into a full Spanish school, and they were like 100% fluent in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even have an accent, at all. And I had the cash out of our houses, which wasn't a lot, but it was, it was a chunk I needed to do something with. And I had been learning through these people, these super smart guys, about digital currencies. And I started slowly at first to invest in Bitcoin. And that really opened my eyes. So learning about Bitcoin is counterintuitive to everything that I learned about the world, because Bitcoin is essentially a type of, for lack of a better word, money, right?
Yeah.
It's essentially a money, and it's a money that's competing against the US dollar, right? And I'm not going to dig deep into the specifics about it, but Bitcoin is a much better version of that dollar, of that money, and it will replace all currencies in the world over the course of the next, say, 10 years.
Yeah.
But in order to get to that spot, to make that statement, it set me down a huge roller coaster ride of how the world works from a macro scale, like the geopolitical circus, including the COVID, including how all money works, including how war works, including how people deal with their everyday stuff, and how that affects me on an everyday basis. And what it also allowed me to do was Bitcoin, I realized, was the key to making it so that those connections, a war in Israel, or some kind of act of aggression by a government on its people in Canada, Bitcoin was the tool that gives me separation from those. And I had just come through this giant ordeal about realizing that the government itself, my location, was what broke my little beautiful bubble beforehand, right? And so that disconnection with the government, and now building businesses that are disconnected from a place, has given us a beautiful nimbleness that I couldn't have fathomed 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I couldn't have wrapped my brain around the ability to be as nimble and disconnected, but at any time being able to re-engage anywhere I want. And the keys to that were the building that online business, and Bitcoin, which is a digital currency.
How does digital currency help to separate you from governments? What are the mechanics of that?
Oh man, here's a rabbit. This is a whole podcast, but
let's just do the super short version.
Yeah, in short, I'm trying to distill that.
What I'm actually saying is I'd like to do that podcast. I'd like to have that conversation.
I don't know if I'm the guy, but
yeah,
maybe I could.
For my level, you sure are.
Every dollar that you have right now, right? You don't really have control of it because you have a dollar in your pocket. But the thing is as you're looking at your dollar in your pocket, the government is literally printing $1 trillion new dollars every 70 days now.
Yes.
Right. So with every dollar that they print, your dollar is shrinking. It's like a piece of ice that's melting. There's no freezer. You can't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, at some point, you just a little tiny piece of ice and you won't be able to do anything with it.
Mm.
It's just melting. And it's melting at a huge exponential rate. The heat when COVID happened, the heat got turned up to a crazy amount, right?
Mm.
And I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we should look this up. But it's like 40% of all the money that's ever been created throughout the American history has been printed in the last 8 years.
Mm. And every dollar printed has a direct effect on the value of every other dollar.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so Bitcoin is the opposite. Bitcoin is There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. It is actually deflationary in that the only thing that can ever change with it is that you could lose your Bitcoin. Because if you lose your Bitcoin, you can't call a bank and say, hey, I forgot my password. It's just gone.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have some self-accountability in it. It's your money. But that self-accountability is a massive freedom. There's no middleman. No one has the key to your little bank vault except for you. And it's more nimble than the dollar. I mean, think about this. If you had a friend who lived in Australia and you needed to send them $5, right? It would be faster for you to book a flight to Australia, go to the ATM, pull out $5, get on the flight to Australia, wander around Australia and hand it to him in person than it would be for a bank to send it to him.
Yes.
Think about that. It's crazy.
Of course, now you have Venmo and stuff like that, but yeah.
Well, but Venmo has to go. You can't even do that. It's like you're crossing an international border.
I see what you're saying. I've never tried to do it internationally. Okay, that makes sense. Gotcha. Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. It's all like governments control everything that you do.
Gotcha.
You don't even see it. You don't know how much they're controlling it until you're out of that system. And while that might not be a terrible thing, right? I mean, like, no, it's not going to really affect you. Here's the thing. Over the course of the next 10 years, it will affect you way, way more.
Mm-hmm.
What all of these, so I told you that there's people working on digital currencies for Bhutan and for China and for all these other countries. They're working on it for America too. All these countries, all the major countries in the world are building digital currencies. They're building a new dollar. It's called a CBDC. You can look it up and dig into it. But what essentially it is it's programmable money. They're going to figure out some way to force a CBDC on you. They're going to tell you it's for your own good. It's like real money that's super easy to use. And here's how you're going to do. They might not even, they might just force employers to use only CBDCs and then start eradicating the standing dollar. But what happens is now you have a dollar that exists in a wallet, quote unquote wallet on your phone, which is exactly how Bitcoin works. They're literally taking the technology from Bitcoin.
Probably to fight against it.
Yeah, definitely. Except they're changing it to have absolute control over your money. So right now, if they don't like you, they figure out ways to like block your bank account, stop your bank account or something. But they can't control every transaction, right? But the CBDC, what will happen is because it's like completely programmable. So they don't like that it doesn't matter what it is. Whatever the new thing is on Capitol Hill, you get someone who's extreme right and they don't like, transgender people. They can just literally find all transgender people and just decide that their money is worth half as much as it was. Right? Or that every transaction that they have costs 1.01% of the transaction that every other person is going through. Or it's the opposite. It's a race thing, or maybe it's only aimed at the rich. People on the left get involved in it. They're aiming it at the rich. And now all the rich people, they have to pay 1.5%, for every transaction.
So the difference between the Bitcoin digital currency and this governmental digital currencies that are being developed is that for some reason, governments are not able to control Bitcoin, or at least not to the same extent.
So Bitcoin is completely uncontrollable. Bitcoin is complete free will. The person that built Bitcoin built it in a way that it was distributed over millions of computers. And the only way that you can make a change to Bitcoin, or the way that it works, is to get 51% of those millions of computers to all work against their rational self-interest and change Bitcoin. It's actually even harder than that. I'm not going to get into the specifics. It's basically impossible to even make a change in Bitcoin. And even if you were to make a change in Bitcoin, you could change it for 10 minutes and it would just self-correct.
And the reason it's impossible is because it's completely crowdsourced.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Right. It'd be like saying you can't use the H key on your keyboard from now on out.
Yeah.
You just can't do it because someone could just jerry rig an HT. You can't shut it off.
Yes.
The only way they could kill it is to kill the internet itself.
Interesting.
Right? And they would be unwilling to do that because
course.
all of their systems run on the internet.
Okay, that makes sense.
Even if you could kill, like, let's say you just shut the internet down for 10 years. The thing is two people with two cell phones could bump Bluetooth Bitcoin back and forth while that internet was down. As long as there's two devices that have storage, can connect in any way, then you have Bitcoin. It exists.
So it would basically take a worldwide EMP that could destroy every electronic circuit is what it would truly take to kill Bitcoin. Get it under control.
and the person that Bitcoin, once it was up and running, he is called Satoshi Nakamoto. He just popped smoke and vanished. Like straight out of the Matrix. Like he just disappeared. Nobody knows who he is. He's one of the richest. If he is still alive, which many people doubt, he is like one of the richest people in the world because he owns like 1 million Bitcoin. So like, yeah, it's crazy, which is like $90 billion or $90 trillion right now. So it is uncontrolled and no one can control it, right? And it will always be that way. And it's fast. So here's the thing about Bitcoin. Think about 1990, right? And think about like the advent of the internet. You lived through that, right? And people were like, oh, this is going to change the way that we communicate with each other.
Yep.
Which is like the biggest understatement of 100 years.
Yes.
Right? Like the internet revolutionized the way that we conceive the world around us, from entertainment to education to communities to everything. Bitcoin is to the financial world, and meaning literally everything that money touches, which is literally everything.
Yes.
Bitcoin is to that the way that the internet was to communication and education and entertainment and communities.
Interesting.
And it's like literally it's taken me years to like kind of wrap my head around it, but it is the most important thing in the world today, in my opinion.
It feels really important to me, but it also feels extremely daunting because my brain recoils at all of the technical information that you have to wade through in order to get a worldview that includes a good understanding of BitCurrency.
The thing about it, though, is you don't actually have to know anything. That's the most beautiful thing about it. You don't have to know anything about it. Literally nothing. If you have to know that you want it, and you also need to know that if you get some, don't lose it. And that's not barred. You just write it down. If you had bought, $100 worth of Bitcoin back in 2014. And then just work off that it existed, and then opened your drawer with your little passcode, here in 2024, you would be a multimillionaire.
Yeah, because of deflation specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I mean, there's a funny story that back in 2012, the guy bought. Well, I don't even know. I don't know this story, but he ended up buying 2 pieces for like 280 Bitcoin or something like that. And now those 280 Bitcoin, you could buy like 20 houses with. Or
an island. Yeah.
So to him, it made sense at the time. That's how much it was worth in fiat, regular dollars today. But I'm just saying, do research if you want and learn about it, because it is an exciting, interesting ride. And that ride itself, that knowledge, the seeking of that knowledge has learned immensely from.
Yes.
But you don't have to know any of that to invest in Bitcoin. You just have to buy it today, yesterday.
But isn't there a lot of different Bitcoins? Like I've just heard so many stories about, most people get into Bitcoin and invest in something that is affordable, and then it just loses all of its value. Or are you talking about one specific one?
No. So you're talking, you just mishmash the words up.
Sweet.
So you're talking about crypto.
Oh, you're right.
Cryptocurrencies, and there are billions of cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
There's only one Bitcoin.
Gotcha. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it's the first one. All of the other ones are kind of, they came after.
Okay.
And they all have their places, but none of them are decentralized, and all of them can be stopped. And 99% of them are garbage.
I get it now.
Bitcoin is not.
In my mind, crypto, Bitcoin, like it's all just kind of different names for the same thing. So I appreciate that clarity. It all feels so much easier now.
Yeah,
I am super interested. And you recommended a book to me that I'll admit I have not read yet.
Bitcoin, hard money you can't fuck with, I would guess, is probably the one I recommend.
That's it. Yep.
It's important. So that little ride of Bitcoin is now placed. So we still own a yoga. We actually built a yoga studio here in Mexico, mostly because we love the yoga and we love the impact that it has on people. And we were tired of doing yoga in our level cramped bedroom. So we still own a yoga studio, but it's not really to make money. It's mostly just like a thing to do that we love. And it forced us out of our shell a little tiny bit. But I'll admit, it was like when we were building this studio, I kind of was like hoping to like chase the dragon a little to like get me out of my little comfort zone, because it's where I love to live. It's outside of my comfort bubble.
Yes.
And building a new business in a country that I don't know, a language that I don't understand, and all the rules and regulations and traditions and things that I don't understand. I thought that was going to do it, but it didn't scratch my itch. So that brings us to the like present. I've kind of learned that things don't really turn out the way that my little plan was supposed to be, and that's better. And I learned that it's hard to see when you have a dependency on a place or a government, but it's a dependency that they take advantage of every chance they get. And once you are out of it and are seeing it, now I see it in everything, how governments take advantage of people. And it's not just the U.S. government, but that's the one that I'm most familiar with. And I also had dependency on stuff. Right? We didn't really talk about it, but when we got rid of literally everything and stripped down to just literally a suitcase was all that we had, 2 suitcases. That was the most free thing in the world. Oh my God. Kay and I were just talking the other day, I think, because we haven't been here for years now, and we were starting to accumulate shit again. And we're actually going to build a new tradition in our house. We haven't sprung it on the kids yet. We haven't kind of worked out the details. But what we're going to do is we're going to tell them that we're going to act like we're going to move. We're going to literally do the same thing. We're going to put suitcases on the floor. We're going to say, put everything you love into that suitcase, everything that you want into that suitcase, and we're going to go get in the car. And we'll just like go to the beach and have company come in and just get rid of everything, donate the rest, get rid of it or something. We haven't worked out the details of how to get rid of everything. And we'll probably stick with a few, we have like a Vitamix blender, which we wouldn't ever carry in an airplane. We might keep, like little things like that.
Furniture to make the house livable.
Yes. Like all the stuff in the junk drawer is gone.
The knickknacks.
Right? There's no Scotch tape anymore. We got to start open. Right. So that's something that we're actually going to work on.
I love the idea. I mean, there's a version of that, but I mean, we're thinking a lot about purging as well, and it's overwhelming, especially when you have kids. Stuff, even if you're just a human, stuff just piles up. So I love this idea.
Exactly. So that's something we found that there is freedom that we don't want to get rid of, like the Great Depression.
Yes.
is still influencing the way that I think about shit.
Yes.
And I didn't live through the Great Depression, but my grandma did.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, just keep this little box. We're gonna keep it because it's maybe super useful someday in the future, right? This shit is garbage. Going back to that barnacles on the side of your shit. That box is my new barnacle that I'm stripping off. It slows you down. So we're constantly. I was always shooting for being rooted and strong. And now a focus in my life is to be flexible and nimble. Right?
Yes. Your whole worldview has changed. Again. I heard a worldview shift happen when you started talking about Bitcoin. I feel like that awareness of Bitcoin and that subsequent research shifted your worldview again.
Yeah. It did. But really, it's all kind of wrapped in with COVID because when it's that dependency on the government, like I couldn't have come to this spot that I had at Bitcoin if COVID, if I hadn't been like literally shoved out of like a thing. Like there's the building that we were in, it stayed empty until like 4 months ago.
Wow.
Because what are you going to do? You can't. It's so hard to build a small business now in those spaces. And every small business is like, well, what happens if they just close this down again at the drop of a hat? Right?
Yes.
So I actually almost bought that building. That's a huge bullet dodge.
Yeah. Bullet dodged. Awesome.
And now the money thing has like solved itself. Like now I'm in this spot that I'm like, the hell am I doing? Right? It's almost like a midlife crisis, like in Hollywood, right? In Hollywood, I'd have went out and bought a convertible and started hooking up with young girls, right?
Yeah.
That's not what it is. It's just me. Now I'm turning back in and I'm starting to go through me and my belief systems again with a super, super fine-tooth scalpel comb. So I'm in this interesting place where I've learned this freedom of rules and the freedom to be authentically me and the freedom of self-reliance and the freedom to choose who I spend time with and the freedom to create money if I need to and to reinvent my operating software and the freedom to live in my own true self and the freedom of dependencies, except for the kids, which I enjoy, and the freedom of location. And now a new freedom of time. So I checked all the boxes that I thought I needed to check. Now I'm looking for new boxes. I don't know what I don't know. It's like I'm a kid that was born in a pilotless fighter jet. And somehow I managed to keep it from crashing into the mountains and the oceans. And then I not only did that, but I kind of started to learn how to steer and kind of control it a little bit. And I just recently figured out how the autopilot function worked. And now I'm like leaned back and I'm looking at the dashboard with all of its bells and its whistles and wondering what all these other buttons and switches do. And the cynic in me wants to just leave it all alone, just say, stop fiddling with stuff. But the curious part of me wants to start flipping switches and see what this baby can do. So right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking. I'm listening to the world a lot. And I'm spending a lot of time focusing on being a really, really good father, which is kind of hard to do when your nose is at the grindstone.
Yes.
So I spend a lot of time. We play a lot. I try every day. It's super hard, but I try. I learned a long time ago when I was a young dad. Someone said, hey, just spend 10 minutes a day, eyeball to eyeball with your kids. Like let them lead for 10 minutes. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're having tea, you're having tea. If you're throwing balls, you're throwing balls. It doesn't matter. They lead and you're their playmate for 10 minutes. And so I try to do that now. Oh, we've had another kid too. So we had a third kid here in Mexico. And he's 2 years old. So now we got a 9-year-old coming up on the 6th birthday and just turned 2. And we play a shit ton of board games, which is really fun. And I try, doesn't happen every day, but I try to, I live at the ocean in paradise. I try to get in the ocean for 10 minutes a day and like take a dip and connect with the earth, with the ocean. And I actually, it sounds kind of funny, but I like have a conversation every day. I have a conversation with the ocean, like almost like it's a mentor. We just am quiet and I just listen, right? Sometimes the ocean is angry and I listen to it, and sometimes the ocean is playful and I play with it and I listen. I'm practicing right now what I call, like in my head, I call it radical presence. Like I started out like once a day or twice a day, I would try to like just stop for, 20 seconds and like just feel the sensations on my skin, feel the wind blowing on me, smell the air, taste whatever's on my tongue, whether it's like a sour taste of not having eaten in a long time or whatever. Especially I try to do it while I'm eating. To listen to the sounds around me, to really go through the whole gamut of sensations, only for a few seconds, just really take it like a snapshot, right? A moment to just really completely feel and see and smell and taste the world around me for just a moment. And with that, coming back to that whole mushrooms thing, right? That bigger sense, that connection.
Yes.
To feel like the inside of me, like what am I feeling? Do I have a pain in me at all? Was there a hitch in my giddy up over here or anything? And how am I connected outward? Right. And I don't dwell. I just literally just try to feel. And that it's a muscle I'm learning. It's hard to do, dude. It's so hard. I think some people just do this naturally, but I don't. And so it's a muscle that I have to flex, and I have to flex it over and over, and it's getting easier. So now I'm getting to where I do it probably once every 15 minutes, and instead of being 20 seconds, it's 4 seconds, or 3 seconds.
Yes.
And it's funny, I've listened to all your podcasts actually. And something that's kind of struck me is you were talking to your dad and how he was a young man. He started not wearing shoes because he wanted to toughen up his feet. And the funny thing is I have recently stopped wearing shoes, not completely, but I am now not wearing shoes most of the time. And the reason is because it's the opposite. It's a good reminder to feel the earth.
Interesting.
I want to feel more.
Yes.
I'm doing a ton of meditation and breath work. I'm still doing those like body hacks, but now it's aimed at my health and the way that it's aimed at like the fundamentals of who I am, my body, right? So straight up breathing, like how do I breathe? Can it be done differently? How do I eat? Can it be done differently? I'm toying with fasting, all sorts of other fasting, the way I eat, the way I sleep. I'm learning to play the fiddle, and the guitar, and the ukulele. I'm playing with Spanish. I've always loved language, so I'm playing that. That in Spanish, the word enjoy is disfruten, which it literally means to take the fruit out of. You say, take the fruit out of that toy, like enjoy that toy.
So descriptive.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about Spanish. Well, actually, the funny thing is when you start stepping into a different language. When I was a kid, I noticed a lot of like really interesting things about language, but at some point they kind of dried up.
Yeah.
But now it's reawoken this. It's like turned on a circuit in my head. And now I play, there's so many fun things with English that I just never even noticed.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm doing is I'm still reading a lot. I read Existential, Kink, and
Oh, I love that book.
Most of the books that you recommended me. The book I recommended to you, or Almanack of, what's the name?
Almanack.
The Naval, right? So I'm still like digging. I'm digging constantly, right? But I'm finding that I read so many of them, I'm not getting the impact that I had when I was younger.
Yes.
I'm learning less.
Yes.
Because like I said, I've written all these rules in pen,
Yes.
and they're rules that I trust and I live by. And I'm like, nope, it's not it. It might be a truth for someone else, but it's not a truth for me. Right. But when it's something that interests me, I have the time to embrace it fully. And once again, I'm trying on these ideas and I'm playing with them a little bit. And if they work, then they work. And if they don't work, then they don't work. Right. One of the things that I recently read was about a guy, this is back in the 70s. He went into a cave. The experiment was he was going to go in there, but he was out any time and he was going to live for, I think, a month. And he had exercise equipment, he had food, he had everything he needed, and he had a radio. And every morning when he woke up, he would get up and he would make an announcement on the radio and say he woke up. And when he decided to have breakfast, he would have his breakfast, and then he would have his lunch, and he reported all of it as he went. And then when he got tired, he went to bed and he reported the whole time. But once again, he had no clock. He had nothing to tell him the time, and there was no sun that came up or down. So he had the only thing he could go by was how long it took to chew, how long it took to do whatever. And they started finding out that he started, like, his days started getting longer, right? So they started out just like 10 or 15 minutes, but it got to the point that he was awake for like 18 or 20 hours. And then he'd go to sleep for 3 or 4 hours and wake up and think that he slept all night, and he'd start again. And so he'd call them at 3 a.m. and be like, time to wake up. I'm up, making breakfast. And then that cycle kept on going. He kept doing 18-hour days and would sleep for just a couple of hours at night. And every day he had to count for 160. And he had learned how to do it to a metronome before he went at 1, 2, 3, 4, exactly 60 seconds. You almost get it every single time. But towards the end of it, he was, I don't remember the exact number, but he was basically, it would take him like 2.5 or 3 minutes to count to 60. His time was literally slowing down. Right. And by the time when he got to like day 14 and they came in and said, well, your month's up, he was so completely confused.
Wow.
Right. Because he was on day 14.
Yes.
Like his whole world.
Wow.
Slowed down. So that made me kind of think about, the whole world is slower down here, but I'm trying to forcefully slow down. The world isn't measured in money or in things that you accomplish or in anything else. The world is measured in moments, in a glimpse of laughter and a knowing look from a kid, or a wink, or a titter, or a giggle, or a cry, right? It's a moment. That's how it's measured. And you can live your whole life and not experience those. You can build walls around yourself, and you can go work in a cubicle, and you can get by and have almost none of them, except for when someone accidentally bumps into your grocery store. Or you can manufacture them. You can hack as many of those moments in to every waking hour as is possible. And so that's what I'm trying to do right now. And it's not from a dark, scary place.
You're not grasping.
I'm not grasping, and I'm not like I'm afraid I'm going to die or anything. I'm in this spot that I'm like, well, if I'm here, I'm going to enjoy it, right? And I'm not going to waste my time on stupid shit, right? If it doesn't immediately give me, like, if it's not something that so hell yeah, then I'm trying not to do that. It used to be like I was saying no a lot more. But now, if it's not fuck yes, and I knew that concept a long time ago, but I tried to live by it. But now I'm really trying to live by that. The idea of a legacy is bullshit. Everything that you've said and done, your kids might hear and might remember for the rest of their life after you've died. But then they'll die. And you might even have created a strong legacy of family and the way that people interact in the world. But on a long enough timeline, everyone's going to forget you.
Yes.
And all of the work that you've done is going to turn to dust. And all the work that was based off of that is going to turn to dust. And in an incredibly short amount of time, all of humanity will just be a dot, right? A smudge on this crazy fucking universe, right? This whole universe has gone on for billions and billions of years before you, and it might not have even noticed. It might not have even been able to turn its head and see that humans existed before they blink out of existence. And it will just be the universe for billions and billions of years on the flip side. All right.
Uh-oh. Reconnecting. I love technology. Orlo? Oh, hey. I hear you now.
Okay.
It's a sign from the universe.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know where I was at.
So, and what all of that narrative that you were just saying made me think of is a past version of me would have heard utter bleakness in that. Like, that sounds so depressing depending on your cosmology. Like, when you see the world, when you see the universe as something that is purposeful and is beautiful, not purposeful in a religious way, but just purposeful in, there's that fingerprint of creation on everything. It's the, Alan Watts's joyful cosmology.
Right.
Then everything that I heard you saying sounds like pure optimism to me, because your point is, the whole point of it is be here now, experience the experiences that are in front of you.
Exactly. Yep. And it's it's so incredibly joyous.
Yes.
Like, get on your hands and knees with a 2-year-old, front lawn. That is the most amazing thing in the world. That's it. That's where it's at.
Yes. That's freaking beautiful. And I mean, money is the thing, right? That's the problem. That's the block. That's the thing you need. And when you get on your knees for this moment with the 2-year-old, when you just be here now and you stop worrying about it, the sense I'm getting is that you're going to start doing the things that you love to do. You're going to bring something that only you can bring to the world, and you're going to get paid. It ain't going to be the way you think. It's not going to be the way you expect or plan, but don't worry about it.
And you don't have to have any money to get on your hands and knees with a 2-year-old.
Yes. Or talk to the ocean.
Right. That's another thing that's out of this.
Or the trees. I talk to the trees because I'm surrounded by them. But
so the same thing, right? You don't have to. You can experience joy anywhere.
Yes.
What I am fortunate for is that I have the freedom of my time to do that essentially anytime I want, right? But that it's not required.
Yeah.
If I was a kid knowing now what I know, maybe I would have just gone out into the woods and built a cabin.
Go get raised by wolves.
But that would have. The problem with that is it robs you of one of the most beautiful things in the world, and that's humans, in my opinion.
And without other humans, you would never have been able to come to see yourself when you were 13.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or start that journey, which obviously you are still on, in an even more epic way, because you're up there in that fighter jet. And I get the sense that all the levers and buttons you're exploring right now are the things you were just describing. They're very much philosophical, metaphysical, exploring yourself. Really, you're asking yourself the question, who am I?
Exactly.
Yeah. And do you have the next big thing? Do you have plans, or are you really parked there right now, just practicing being here and finding out who you are?
Yes. I'm both, right? I'm exploring and listening, but at the same time, I love building things.
Mm-hmm.
I love helping, and I love being part of communities and tight. I love being in the hustle and the bustle and the flow. And part of that for me is where I found the most beauty in that is when I'm in the middle of it, when I'm running a business or I'm building a thing that other people can get. And so I am looking, I told you that I didn't get the endorphin rush that I was hoping for out of this last business, right? So now the question is, what is the next business? But I'm not going to just go nimbly bimbly into another business. This next business has to be something, it's going to have to be something big, something, well, I don't know, big. Big's not the right word. It has to be something that is very, very true to me.
Organic? Does that work? That springs forth out of you rather than your kind of architect, like being like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this.
It should be organic, but it shouldn't be too organic because I want it to be something that seems, I want it to be hard.
But you want it to come out of the questions you're asking yourself now.
Yeah. And going back to the beginning when I asked you when I flipped the narrative on you, part of what I'm trying to learn is who I am to other people. Yes. I know who I am. I know my thread. I know my conscious thread, right? But I want to see other perspectives. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to go about that, but that's one of my goals. And for some reason, I feel like that is one of the threads that I need to see myself through other perspectives. Another thread that's been happening lately is this law of attraction that I always I read books about the law of attraction years and years ago, and I tried it on and I didn't like it. But I have recently, I just keep, if I'm thinking about a thing, it's just there. Like Kay and I will be talking about something and it's just like, an ad pops up on Facebook or something, like your phone's listening to you, except it's not that. It's like in real life, the person you're talking about, you're thinking about, like the night before, the next day walks through your door.
Yes.
Right? In completely random ways. And it keeps spinning back on this interconnection of the world. And I don't know if I'm going to build a business around this. I doubt I will, because that's not really my thing that I think that I can explain to the world. But
yeah,
it's something that I'm super interested in. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to pin that down. Maybe that's just the thing that I chased for a while, but it's something that just keeps happening.
I mean, you talked about getting into training or education or mentorship, some version of that. I'm not sure exactly how you said it, but that just reminds me about every book I read where someone is explaining how they did it. There's always the thread of, if you want to learn something, teach it. In a lot of your narrative, I'm like, you need to write a book. Like, not because you have all this information to share with the world, but because you are fucking curious. And that's how you're going to scratch that curious itch. I'm going to be watching with interest. I'm glad to see where your life has come now. And it's very much where the first time I thought of you, I was like, I bet I know where his life has gone, because I knew the questions you were asking and the curiosity and the energy and the honesty that you were coming to it. And it's just fantastic to hear the story and to see where you've gone. And it's an inspiration to me because, I started my intentional finding myself, looking at myself much, much later, like age later than you did. And so every time I hear a story of somebody who has been down some of the roads that I'm trying to walk down, It's just, I mean, even if I don't learn anything, because the truth is you're a very different person than me, I'm not going to do things the same way that any other person has done them. I don't want to anymore, but it's just encouraging to hear somebody else who's doing it. And it was just like, whatever, I'm going to figure out who I am, and I'm going to figure out how to be me in this moment. I appreciate that. Yeah, and there are so many questions. Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say?
Oh, just saying thank you for reaching out and reconnecting us.
Hell yes. Sure. There's so many questions I've had, so many rabbit trails I've avoided because I had a feeling that there was going to be a lot here, just a lot of time to kind of get caught up on who you are, get that picture. But in recording, out of recording, I look forward to so many future conversations with you as time allows. Life is busy in many ways for both of us, but I look forward to it.
Me too.
If you were, because I mean, you talked about, you have a pretty good idea that you're going to die and the universe is going to die. Well, the universe maybe not, but everyone's going to die. So let's say that you're going to die tomorrow, and you've got one opportunity to say something that is going to make an impact. What would you say?
Oh man, I would just say I love you.
I love it.
Every person. I have very few regrets. I'd like to say that I haven't left anything on the table. Like, I made a New Year's resolution last year, and it was basically be more Dumbledore, right? Be the guy that can walk into the craziest situation in the world and be completely calm and cool about it. And so every time that I do something that I regret, I often question, did that come from a fear? Or where does it come from? Just like when I was 13 years old. I'm like, where did that come? Why did that happen? And I dig until I find it. And if I can, sometimes I just have to just acknowledge it. I just have to look at it and say, oh, you're a fear that I didn't know I had, right? And then they stop being a fear.
Yes.
So I'm now at the point, if you were to ask me if I had fears, I could say yes and I could say no, and they would both be true.
Yes. What's your biggest fear? Right from the gut. You already said you don't have fear. I got that. So, but on the yes side.
Yeah, like losing my kid in a crowd, or it's going to be a completely irrational fear.
Okay.
It'll be different in every moment.
And probably about your kids.
I guess fear would be to not be prepared or not understand something that I need to have understood. And actually, if I was to pinpoint a fear that has been a long recurring fear that I can't get rid of, it's hard to say what the name of. It's hard to name it. I've seen the closest I've seen in books that I've read is people talking about the fear of succeeding, right?
I see.
And that is not it precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not afraid of success. But
are you afraid of getting corrupted by success?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. But it's a fear of. I think it's a fear of too much velocity. I feel like there's times in my life that I could have just stormed through the gates, but I made a soft entrance because of fear of success. Right. And I ended up niggling my way through. But in retrospect, I was like, why didn't I just do that strong and powerful?
Are you afraid of speed wobbles?
Maybe that's it. Yeah. Maybe I'm afraid of speed.
You're afraid to just fully streamline yourself on that skateboard going down that hill because the speed wobbles are coming if you go too fast, and then it feels out of control. And then you don't know something. I don't know. That makes sense.
It's not a very fun answer.
Oh, all the answers are fun because they show a snapshot of the person I'm talking to, which gives me a reaction, which shows me a snapshot of myself. So I like that. I really appreciate that you took this time late at night And it is late. I'm tired. I got to go to sleep because I got to get up early, and I know you do the same. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh my God, it's one.
Yeah, time flies when you're talking about things that charge you up.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. We'll talk again soon. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.